Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Friday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, a big and furry bovine, introducing the newest feature on the program, Dear Mr. Moohead. Dear Mr. Moohead is nothing original. It is no different than Hey Hoinsey, if you're an Indians fan. You know, a lot of people ask questions of me in the comments of the program or whatever. And, I do a program. I'm not a soothsayer. I don't pretend to know the future. But I do have opinions. And so I figure rather than guessing, I'll just tell you what I think based on questions that are being asked that are of immediate interest to Northeast Ohio sports fans. Now, remember, my opinions are sometimes a little bit out there, and but I have reasons, and you'll see. And we'll start. This is the big one that's coming up right now. You know, with the whole thing about OBJ running out and playing So You Want to Be a Millionaire to athletes who are not eligible to accept cash, the question is Kevin Stefanski is being put in an uncomfortable situation because 3 days into his tenure, here's OBJ slapping security guards in the butt and handing out money like Mr. Millionaire. So the immediate question, God, I sound like Carrie Bradshaw. So the real question is, should the Cleveland Browns trade OBJ? Yes, absolutely. For whatever you can get for him. And let me explain why. I know J.R. Smith's clone when I see him. And I'm not even trying to be funny, although it is, the whole notion of it is remarkably deja vu-ish. Nobody could say that J.R. Smith didn't have the talent to play in the NBA because he certainly did. We're going to bring Brian into the stream now as well. I think that a guy like J.R. Smith, it wasn't that he wasn't capable of playing the game. He could light it up, and he was a great six man. He could score, and he could score in bunches. But there came a point where the skills deteriorated, but the nonsense either stayed the same or it increased. He couldn't sit on the bench without shutting his mouth. He couldn't go out on the floor without committing some bozo error, calling timeouts he didn't have, or God knows what. He couldn't go out in public without offending somebody or drawing headlines wherever he went. Here's what I think about the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns don't need star players. And I know you're going to say, geez, well, didn't a star player get the Cleveland Cavaliers a title? And the answer is, yeah. When there's only 5 men on a court at one time and one of them's LeBron James, he got the Miami Heat a championship too. But star players are for teams that are this close. You know, you can get a star player that pushes you over the edge and gives you that extra weapon, that, extra dynamic thing. But look at the history of the Cleveland Browns. Look at them currently. Nick Chubb is not a star player. In fact, he's unsung compared to other people. Oh, here's Stephen Rose. And welcome to the GOAT. I'm sorry.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, I'm always there for you. But got to be careful, my man. You got to be careful.
Mr. Moohead, if it ain't OBJ, it's the Houston Astros scandal. It's all up in here in the last week.
So I'm starting right out with the OBJ thing. And, my feeling is this, is that it's easy to say, oh, this guy's got an immense amount of talent. But you look at the history of the Cleveland Browns, and you look at the players, and even Jim Brown, who was the greatest football player of his time, was not a headline seeker. You look at the people who contributed.
Okay,
to
but he did throw a woman out of a second-story window.
Yeah, but he obviously had a problem. But back then, it would have been 24/7 news fodder. Actually, there would have been a camera at the bottom of the stairwell. But what I'm saying is, take a look at the history of the team. Brian Sipe, unsung. All right. Dave Logan, unsung. Ozzie Newsome, Hall of Fame, unsung. Nobody really appreciated Ozzie Newsome until year after year after year of excellence, and you never heard boo from him. Kevin Mack, who had drug problems, and that was well chronicled, but he didn't step out in public and make an ass of himself. Ernest Biner, who took the wrath of the public for a fumble that was created by a horrible tackling job by Jeremiah Castillo. But these guys would give up their bodies for the game, and they were all about winning. Bernie Kosar, awkward, gangly, unsung. All of those years that the Cleveland Browns made the playoffs that I'm mentioning in the Sipe era and in the Kosar era, can you name the other players on the team? Webster Slaughter, unsung.
Tom Cousineau was a linebacker.
Reggie Langhorne, unsung.
Doug Deacon was a guard.
Doug Deacon transcended both generations and was a fine player. Unsung, a guy who, coming out of Illinois, was a tight end.
Let's see, who else was? You got Mike Babb, Cody Rizian. Who was the tackle?
I had it, and I didn't spit it out. Ricky Bolden.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, none of those guys is ever going to touch Canton, Ohio, unless they happen to hitch a Greyhound there. But these were unsung guys, but they won. And you take a look.
Clay Matthews,
Jerry Shirk.
Jerry Shirk. Yeah, Bill Glass, if you want to go way back time machine. It's almost uncanny that the Cleveland sports scene with star name players, Andre Rison. He was the one that Kenny Rogers wrote Something's Burning for. And
Kellen Winslow Jr.
That's right.
Yep.
I got my M16.
Burning down the house.
He said that at he did say that at Miami, but still.
The soldier of misfortune, right? And yeah, we bring that upon ourselves. How about Jeff Garcia? Jeff, I'm only known because I threw the ball to Terrell Owens, and I'm too good to be a backup. Remember him? I mean, every name player that came to the Cleveland Browns in their losing state made them worse. RG3. Oh, I ain't going to tell anybody how to play. I ain't going to help coach anybody for the sidelines. I'm a starting quarterback. And he hasn't been since. I could just go through the few names that we've had that were like name players, and it bites us in the ass every time. And the reason is you're paying all this money for this ass clown, and OBJ is an ass clown like J.R.
Hell,
Smith.
we even had a Michael Jackson on the team.
We did. Hey, he was, my butterfingers. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I had that one glove on. I hope he could catch the ball with it.
Yeah. But I mean, you look at the history of the Browns and look at where they are as a team. They're a team struggling to be a 500 team. They're a team that's close, that could go one way with Freddie Kitchens, which was down, or slightly above. But we're trying to build a full roster, and we don't have anywhere near that. And we're worried about this ass clown. I mean, the fact that he slapped the security guard in the butt is disrespectful.
After that guy specifically told LSU players that were sitting down smoking
couldn't smoke a cigar.
he was going to have them arrested. And
Wow.
OBJ slapped that guy on the ass and told him, "Hey, man, chill out. They're celebrating."
Look, that's not what he did. He slapped him in the ass and he taunted him. Look at the video. Look at and look, the security guard was being a dink. But you know something? The security guard is not a legitimate police officer, and he's hired by the
He's Lieutenant Bar Brady from fucking South Park.
Well, he was hired to do a specific job, and if there were rules being broken, he would get busted for allowing it to happen. And I'm not saying that, yes, he was a buzzkill, and after a national championship, it's ridiculous. He should have just kind of loosened his jockey shorts and just kind of chilled a little bit. But a guy who is a high-profile trouble player like OBJ, who gets headlines wherever he goes, who rushes out and giving money to athletes who are not allowed to accept it, but will accept it from him because he's a name player who went to their school. He could potentially have gotten many players into trouble. Not only that, he makes this ridiculous contact with a nobody security guard and manages to draw headlines to himself again. And I'm sick of him. I want him off this team because he's nothing. He's nothing compared to what we need. We need a whole team. We don't need this one guy. And the headlines aren't worth it. And his half-ass patterns that he doesn't run, when he doesn't try, when he's not the primary receiver, he pouts when he doesn't get the ball, and he's doing everything he can do to get out of Cleveland. Let him go. The only thing we gave up for him was Jabril Peppers and Zeitler. Zeitler had a shitty year, and Jabril Peppers is never going to be Ronnie Lott. So get over it. It was a mistake. It was a bad move. We have guys on the team.
Well, we actually got 2 players because we got Vernon back too.
Yeah, right. And he was hurt half the season. But look, sometimes you got to just move on. You can't complicate an error by continuing on with it. It's bad news, and you can't control him. The fact of the matter is that even in the greatest moment for LSU in recent history, this ass clown has to bust into the affair and become the headline. That's who he is. He would take all the attention away from the college players who won the national championship, so the spotlight is on him once again. Tired of it. And that's not what we need. You know what we needed more of? We needed more of reliable people like Rashard Higgins, who gave up because he was playing for a hick. We needed people who ran the right patterns and caught the ball. You don't need David Njoku. You don't need him. If he can't catch the ball, Baker Mayfield doesn't need him. And the fact is that OBJ was dropping passes because he was pouting and the little tears in his eyes blurred his vision. Yes, I would trade him in a heartbeat, and I would do it on the cheap. Because the bottom line is he got no place on this team, and a new head coach will have no credibility if he sits down in his rookie year and puts up with more of this horse shit from this ass clown. That's how you get fired. That's how you get stepped on. You want to make something clear to the players on your roster? Emulate Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry was at the game. Jarvis Landry took in LSU's national championship. Where's the headlines? Where's the video? I'm wiping off my lenses. Where's the fucking video of Jarvis Landry?
Preach.
Giving out money. And you know something? Jarvis Landry's back was busted. Everything was busted in his body, and he gave us everything he had. That's the kind of player you want. Somebody who really gives it up for the team. A professional football player. The Nick Chubbs of the world. And I know that Kareem Hunt is a guy who has a tarnished past. But nobody can question his effort on the football field. Those are the guys you want. The guys you don't want are the Greg Robinsons who don't move their feet half the time and get your quarterback killed. People who take plays off like Hubbard. If you're taking plays off, team don't need you. If you're that close to being a 500 football team and you're not able to get over the hump, you can't afford having dead wood in your roster. It's that simple. All right. Next question. Oh, by the way, panel, would you trade OBJ? We'll start with Jake.
Depends what you get. I mean, it's going to be hard to get rid of him for anything less than you gave up for. I mean, a second-round pick, right? If they can get a second and third, I would consider it.
I'm not even going to ask. Because nothing you said was that funny, Jake. I suppose somebody in the chat room said something.
You think you're going to get a second and a second or a third round pick?
I don't.
You're going to be close. You're going to be lucky to get a fourth or a fifth round for
Exactly. That's why I wouldn't get rid of him. I mean, at this point, I would just keep him because you're not going to get any value back anyways.
Rick,
and you're going to probably have to pay his salary anyways too. They're not going to take his whole salary regardless. So the Browns are still going to have to pay him.
Yeah, good point.
I'd go something along the lines of what Jake said, like probably a third rounder. If you can find an established lineman and maybe include that into the mix, some sort of like an offensive tackle or guard, possibly a linebacker that's established.
All right. How about you, Rox? Come on.
Well, I will agree with the others. I'd go ahead and keep them, if nothing else, but the entertainment value of the thing. But I do believe that I could work with that person and just help him to behave more appropriately. And I do think that he brings. To work with. I think that he brings value to the team.
All right, Brian.
The only way you're going to get anything back for him is to let him play this season and try and up his productivity. He led the team in targets and he was second in receptions. So.
All right, and Steven, what do you say?
Can you repeat the question again?
It's a trick question. Careful.
Would you get rid of, trade OBJ?
Yeah, definitely. Not even a question. I would trade him. Guy's too much of a distraction.
You were distracted by something there, whatever the hell that was. I don't know. All right. Question number 2. Should we bring back Steve Wilks? And I get this one asked too. And what are really the options in all of this? Steve Wilks has a year under his belt with the Cleveland Browns. And he was really playing with a douchebag coach who would at the worst possible time whisk his team off the offense off the field. The defense would get caught. The mistakes that were made, the lack of effort by the defense was largely accomplished because of repeated ridiculous play calling and a loss of control by the head coach on all of the players. Because we know this, the defensive players weren't getting it done, but the receivers were not running out their patterns. The offensive linemen were not on the same page. People were lining up in the wrong places. So the whole team was full of disarray. My feeling is this. When Myles Garrett was playing, the defense actually sometimes played decently. And second of all, assuming that Stefanski is a little bit better of a motivator / attention to detail person and get some of these people to do what they're supposed to do, you're either talking about Steve Wilks or somebody who's never done the job in the NFL before, because Wade Phillips is completely out of the equation. I would rather have Steve Wilks come back than bring in a first-time defensive coordinator. So you have a first-time head coach and a first-time defensive coordinator. I believe that Steve Wilks is a better choice than bringing in somebody new. And for lack of anything else to say, he was a head coach for a very brief period of time. Now we'll go opposite way and we'll go, seeing as how I can still see Stephen off gazing into the clouds. Brian, should we bring back Steve Wilks?
Yes, because some of the key departures are people that needed to be replaced anyway. Lupoy went to Atlanta. Somebody else went to the Panthers. And so I think that there's enough position coaches available that you can definitely build a good staff around
Right.
Wilks.
All right, and now we move to rocks. Do you keep Steve Wilks the defensive coordinator?
Yes, I do believe that they should keep Steve Wilks. The coach already has a rapport with that person, so, and he does have experience, so I believe that he should be brought back and given a chance to work with this team and this coach.
Do you want to work with him too?
Sure, why not?
He got a fine brown frame. He got. Oh, I'm sorry. All right, Rick. Should we bring back Steve Wilks?
Yeah, at least just for continuity's sake, and also give him a chance to maybe have a full year with a complete defense to work with. He only had Myles Garrett for a portion of the time, was dealing with some injuries. I think another year there would probably be a benefit to both him and to the defense as well.
I can't help but think that players like Greedy Williams would not be served by bringing in a first-year, never-done-the-job before guy. Guys' careers hang in the balance. You have a year like Greedy Williams had where his effort really dropped as the year progressed, as the season progressed. You want to get a guy back on track who has some skills and talent and giving 100% effort. And I don't see a first-time guy really getting that done. Jake?
I would keep him just because the second half of the year was very bad, but also Garrett was gone. And he showed that he is important for the defense, the key for the defense. So in the end, I don't think you can blame the second half of the season on him. And I think the first half of the season is good enough defensively if the offense can play decent football with the talent they have.
And now I will go to Steven and say, should we bring back Steve Wilks?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, the only thing hanging over his head is that bad second half of the season, and plus they're going to say, well, he wasn't good as a head coach. But I think as a defensive coordinator, he'd be a great acquisition to bring back. He only had 1 year under the Browns, and if you bring him back, like Rick said, with a completed defensive roster and have a whole year under his belt, I don't see why they shouldn't retread this particular tire.
All right. Next question. Should we keep, or would I keep, Kareem Hunt on the team? The choice of head coach is going to, and we've heard this before, accentuate running game and get more of a balance between the running game and the passing game to get Baker Mayfield in alignment with throwing somewhere in the range of 27 to 30 passes a game instead of over 40 passes a game. And allegedly, the forgetting about running game is going to be a thing of the past. Nick Chubb can't do that by himself. What we know about the NFL is that running backs have short careers, and especially guys like Nick Chubb, big cutback, quick step runner. All it takes is one misstep, guy steps on him, rolls up on him, or whatever. You've got to have a backup back. But more significantly, in my mind, if you really want to help Baker Mayfield, stop with the empty backfield sets and give him an opportunity to have two running backs. Kareem Hunt proved in limited time last year to be a very willing blocker as well as a good receiver out of the backfield, and he didn't get to really show as much running skills as what he has. And this will lighten the load on Nick Chubb so that he will be more effective through 16 games. And you need to have everybody as healthy and as primed as possible as the season progresses. The other thing is, if you're Baker Mayfield and you have two running backs in the backfield, you're going to have a little increased pass protection, but you also are going to have Kareem Hunt as an outlet. a guy who you can complete a high percentage of your passes to, who has the ability to make people miss and to actually run through tackles because his legs are so thick. So, absolutely yes, a resounding yes. I would keep Kareem Hunt.
Can I go?
Yep, go ahead.
Well, Mr. Moohead did take some of the things that I had said, so I'm going to add to it. Just look at the Texans and how they built off both of our running backs, both Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson. 1-2 punch knockout. I think with Baker Mayfield having 2 solid running backs, I mean, I know Kareem Hunt only played, 8 games last year, and he had, 2 touchdowns. But, again, this is the same question we asked to keep Steve Wilks. Talk about continuity. So now we can bring a running back in that can play a full 16-game schedule along with Nick Chubb. So I think that this will help the Cleveland Browns' offensive capability even stretch further with the 2 running back set, and then you got your receivers. So it opens up the passing game too. So I say let's keep Kareem Hunt.
And Brian, you brought up this in the chat room. Fire away.
Well, yeah, in 8 games, he was the 3rd leading receiver on the team with 33 catches, I believe, and 2nd on the team in rushing. So, the only problem with Hunt is wherever Dorsey ends up as a GM, he's going to automatically have a contract offer from John Dorsey, and he could bolt for that. But he is a restricted free agent. So that gives the Browns some flexibility there.
And I that's a good point you bring up. And Kawaki's asking if he's going to be fine being the Sundance Kid. And, I didn't see any indication this year that he had any problem getting his fingernails dirty out there on the field. And I don't think...
And threw wicked blocks.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, we had somebody who could block.
Yeah.
And honestly, I didn't see a lack of effort from him. Even when the team was going down the crapper, he was fighting for every yard that he could get after contact. I have nothing bad to say about what he did on the field, and I saw no indication that he would be a malcontent. Hey, D-Bag, how you doing? I'm glad you're back with the show. Sorry about what happened to your team, but... it's like we say all the time, you're only as good as the last thing you did, and Lamar Jackson is taking way too much crap, and it's not fair. So you know where I stand on this. We'll go to Rick. I'm not going to belabor rocks with the Kareem Hunt thing. And I think she's grateful. Rick?
Yeah, I think we should keep Hunt. Just the idea of having him for a whole season, 16 games, very intriguing. Let's see how he would, work in with a new offensive coordinator. Hopefully someone that, in the name of all that is holy, will never say the word shovel pass again. And, having both Chubb and Hunt for a complete season would definitely improve our running game and would take some of the pressure off of Baker. Once he starts throwing over a 35 pass or something like that, nothing good comes of it.
So I'm just going to make it unanimous and say definitely keep him. I think that he and Chubb make a good team, and Stefanski has mentioned that he's excited to work with both of them. So I say yes, let's keep that positivity and forward momentum going into the new season.
Yeah, and I think he will be used more efficiently than the last bozo. Jake, what do you think?
We'll have to see what he gets on the open market and if it's worth matching. If it's going to be anything near what they want to pay Chubb to keep him after the rookie contract, and I'm guessing they're going to pay Chubb after this year early just to reward him, I would not keep him. If it's going to be that $7-8 million mark or even $6 million, I probably would let him walk. But if it's under 5, I'd probably keep him.
Jeff Bach saying, would Hunt go back to Kansas City? The word dynasty is really overused. Really overused in sports. We were talking about the Golden State dynasty, and look at them now, 9-34.
Would a running back help you get a dynasty per se? I think Mahomes could get that dynasty without Hunt right now.
Yeah, definitely.
They were scoring 44 4 points a game or some ridiculous thing when Hunt was on the team. Remember what they did to the Browns when Hunt was on the team.
Yeah, but everyone does. I mean, the fucking Titans did that to us. Come on. Let's not get carried away. 40 points against the Browns is not an unheard of thing, unfortunately. But yeah.
It's usually known as a good 3
Joan
quarters.
Collins, goddamn.
In football, you're one hit away from a lost dynasty. In the NBA, you're one free agency class away from losing a dynasty and or acquiring a dynasty. And the Kansas City Chiefs are a fine football team, Jeff, but I don't see that addition of that player is going to help them create this dynasty. But yes, I could see Hunt going back there. I mean, a lot of it has to do with how the Browns move forward with Stefanski as the coach, whether a guy wants to stay here or not.
And
So-
whoever they pick as general manager. That's going to have a lot to do with it, too.
Yeah, and obviously, this is one person who did have more than their fair share of dynasty. Thank you, Crumbly Q. I try to forget Joan Collins, and
Even Yoda would be like, "Old you are, yes." Mm?
Yeah, and this is how I feel too. I mean, you know, it's Zonka and Mercury Morris, you know, and Kick, but two, you know, with Kareem Hunt, you got a great receiver, a great running back, and a guy who's willing to give up his body and block. So I mean, who could ask for more?
Oh, who
than
was that guy for the Dolphins? Oh fuck, he was on the team that beat the Bears on Monday Night Football. Morris?
Say again?
Was it Morris? Mercury Morris? No.
Who are you asking? What team did he play for?
He played on the Dolphins with Dan Marino and Duper and
That was Mercury Morris, yeah.
Yeah, the Marx brothers.
yeah, Mark Duper and Mark Clayton.
Right.
But yeah, he's more like that kind of a player, where he's just as good as catching as he is running the football.
Did anyone's screen go blank there, freeze up?
No.
That's funny because I was getting that little circle thing going around on the screen again. Would I hire Andrew Berry? This is another one that keeps coming up. And you know something? This is what I call one of these unimportant questions because it's already been done. I mean, let's be honest about this. It's like, well, we're interviewing two guys, you know, for the GM position, and one is Andrew Berry and one is Timmy Bartholow. Now, I mean, so who's going to get the job? I mean, the thing with Andrew Berry is, was it Sashi Brown? Was it Andrew Berry? Is it analytics? You know, somebody's got to fill the job, and it's going to be an analytics guy. It's going to be Andrew Berry. And do I really give a flying fuck? No, I really don't. Do I care that he had an Ivy League? I've kicked the shit out of people in the broadcast industry who had Ivy League educations that don't mean shit. Donald fucking idiot Trump can say that he has a Ivy League pedigree, although he refuses to release his grades, okay? So he's not going to tell anybody how stupid he is, but the bottom line is anybody can get into an Ivy League school if...
Tony Nathan.
Who's Tony Nathan?
Tony Nathan was the running back I was trying to think of.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Did he play for Alabama?
I
think
don't
so.
know.
I think so.
Yeah, I'm going... That's in the Wayback Time Machine. Yeah.
But anyway, that's who Hunt played like this year. So,
But if you're a legacy like Flounder in Animal House, you can get into the Ivy League schools. There are a lot of people.
is that a pledge pin?
That's right.
Your
Anybody can
uniform?
get if Daddy you know gave enough money to the university, you can be the biggest doofus in the world and get it. That doesn't mean anything to me. It all comes down to the decisions that are rendered, and you know. But I think
You
they're
aren't going to
gonna
wreck
hire
my
Andrew
brother's
Berry.
car, are you?
Yeah. Then this great question: should Stefanski call the plays? All right. Now this one is interesting because we're coming off of an offensive, or I should say, a head coach who insisted on calling the plays. If you're living in a cave, Todd Monken's now in Georgia. You know, believe me, the thing that's interesting about it is Monken is following Freddie back into the deep south to torment him. That's really what it comes down to.
No, he actually wants to just win. So he went to
Georgia.
Who's going to win 10 games every fucking year?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to say this before I answer the question, should Stefanski call the plays? If you're wondering about Freddie Kitchens, how many rumors have surfaced about anybody hiring him?
One that I know of.
Yeah.
He's going to be a position coach with the Giants.
Oh,
I mean, and wouldn't that be the way it goes? Under Gettleman, you know, literally being teabagged by Gettleman. I mean, there's a guy whose career is shit, you know, not Gettleman, although him too. Freddie Kitchens is never going to be considered anything but a laughing stock after what he did.
Stefanski was actually asked this question at his presser, and he said, if it's better for the team that somebody else calls the plays, then I'll let them call the plays.
But the question that's being asked of me is, should he call the plays? And the answer is yes. And you're going to say, oh my God, you're going to do that to us again? And the answer is, the guy who's coming in to be an offensive coordinator has to be knowledgeable in the system that Stefanski has. And has to earn the right to call plays. And again, the problem with the pairing of Kitchens and Monken is that Monken called plays for a longer period of time than Freddie Kitchens did. I mean, it was an awkward Mutt and Jeff pairing to begin with, and it didn't make any sense. You know, whoever Stefanski brings in to groom as the offensive coordinator of the team, that guy is eventually going to call plays, I guarantee you, because Stefanski's going to have his plate full just trying to organize all of these athletes and to get the overall scheme and culture changed to whatever degree he can. But right off the bat, the one thing you cannot afford is what happened to Freddie Kitchens. Right out of the chute, as head coach, the players were unprepared. Coming out of training camp into the preseason, and from the preseason to the first game of the season, they didn't know what in the fuck they were doing. They did not understand the offense that they were running, and it was obvious that no matter what plays were called, the players didn't even know what they were supposed to do. So Freddie Kitchens was an abomination as a head coach. I'm not going to pour that on Stefanski, but he should learn from the mistake of his predecessor. And that is, if you implement a system, you implement it in the most simple, easy to understand, so that even an idiot ass clown who gives college athletes money and slaps security guards on the ass, people like that can understand the playbook. And you also present a simplified, cohesive offense to your quarterback, who is really up in the air, confused right now because he hasn't played in the same system 2 years in a row. So this has to be something that I'd rather have a playbook this big than a playbook this big, and I'd rather have all the plays practiced until these things are perfected, and I would rather do what the Browns did 2 years ago, which was to trim down, and it was the same problem with Haley's offense. They had to trim down the best of the best from that playbook, and they knew how to run those plays. The thing is, Freddie didn't learn from his own experience, and they did not know how to run the plays in the beginning of the year. Stefanski can make sure of the fact that they do understand what they're doing, and the offense will not fail because the players are unaware how to run it. At least that offense, whether it's good or bad, we'll see, will have a chance of succeeding. We go back to the panel. Jake, should Stefanski call the plays?
He should call the plays unless he knows a coordinator he's worked with before that knows the same offense. kind of like how Shanahan took a quarterback coach and Matt LaFleur's brother, who also knows his offense and coached under him, and runs the same offense. But until then, he should definitely call plays.
All right, Rick, what do you think?
Yeah, I think he should call the plays, and if he does bring in an offensive coordinator somewhere down the road, make sure that both of them are on the same page when they're implementing the offensive schemes for that particular week. That way, when something goes on the field, they have an idea of, okay, this is what happened. How can we both, get it fixed? But
Rick, let me ask you, is it logical to you that maybe a quarterback's coach who's a good quarterback's coach for Baker Mayfield would be the logical person maybe to transition into a limited offensive coordinator position and have him grow into the position and win the trust of your starting quarterback?
In a perfect world, that could work, but you're talking Cleveland and logic, and you cannot use those two words in the same sentence.
All right, I'm not going to argue with you there. Rox, what do you do with Stefanski? Should he call the plays?
I think that if he has a good rapport with his offensive coordinator, go ahead and delegate that responsibility. Or if he finds that in the course of calling the plays that he's not as effective, he gets that feedback, then definitely listen to the feedback, unlike the previous coach, and go ahead and delegate that responsibility and give someone else a shot to do a more effective job.
Well, I can tell you this, there's going to be a hell of a lot more feedback, predominantly because these analytics people ain't going to let it go. Brian, if it fails, Brian, should Stefanski call the plays?
Yeah, until we see who he's going to have as his offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
If he's going to drag let's say he drags a position coach from Minnesota who worked under the same system, there may be a less of a learning curve to adapt to someone else calling the plays as opposed to Stefanski calling the plays.
All right. And Stephen, what do you think? Should Stefanski call the plays?
Yes, I think he should. He was offensive coordinator for the Vikings, and like I said, he did one hell of a job over there. I don't see why he can't bring that same success to the Cleveland Browns. And if he brings somebody like Brian said, not to piggyback off of him, but if he brings somebody under his tutelage from over there, like I said, less of a learning curve. Give credit to Brian for that, and with that, I think I see nothing but good things that come from Stefanski. I actually am very confident about this pick from the Browns. At first, I was a little weary, but now looking at his track record, and he seems like a poised kind of guy, very, very settled. I like him, so I'm okay with Stefanski calling the plays. Till otherwise.
And Kawaki, it's interesting what Kawaki has put up here. I don't know that Monken was good, bad, or indifferent. What I can tell you is he certainly had nothing good to say about Freddie Kitchens to opposing teams, and that doesn't make him especially desired. And second of all, he learned something about the NFL, and that is, if you're in Tampa, it's going to be Jameis Winston no matter what. No matter how many interceptions he throws, you're never going to be able to get rid of the guy. And I think that Monken learned in Tampa Bay that you can get 500 yards a game and still have a losing record. And heading to college, there is more of an opportunity to mold players than there is in the NFL. I'm not sure Monken sucked so bad that he was demoted to college. I think maybe enough is enough when you're
going to Georgia is a step up from the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, from the Browns to Georgia, that might be a promotion.
Yeah. I mean, those college coaches get paid more than NFL coaches pretty often in the SEC,
now,
especially assistants.
I'm shifting gears because this is a Northeast Ohio sports show, and I get questions of a wide and varied nature. Would I trade Kevin Love? Okay. And the answer is yes. He's 31 years old. His back aches and the team is going nowhere. But I want to go one step further, because what are you going to get for Kevin Love? And the answer is, you're not going to get even serviceable players. You're going to get mid to lower first round draft pick, if that, for him. And or you're going to get multiple second round picks that don't even make it in the league. And
a bag of stale popcorn.
yeah, but I have an idea. And again, this is where I think a little bit out of the box. I would package Kevin Love and Colin Sexton. And let me explain to you why. Colin Sexton is a young player who shows that he can score the basketball. The Cleveland Cavaliers have the most ill-designed roster in the history of the NBA. You have Darius Garland, who is by far a better point guard than Colin Sexton, but they're both midgets. And when they're both on the floor, you might as well forget it, because mediocre big men look like superstars. The Cavaliers can't stop anybody, and they get ground down by the end of the game. And the reason that the end of games, they don't win games that appear eminently winnable, or they barely hang on, is because they have these two young guys out on the floor and they can't play a lick of defense. The difference between Garland and Sexton is that Garland actually dishes off assists. On the other hand, Sexton is a ball hog. But he is a guy who maybe somebody thinks, because he can score 18 points a night, that they can do something with him. And if you're the Cleveland Cavaliers, you've got to do whatever you can to get a higher first-round pick, because in today's NBA, you're not going to get anywhere without athletic, big men. And I don't just mean like, guys like Embiid or people like, I mean the league is moving toward the Giannis's. The league is moving toward guys who are literally, the Ben Simmons kinds of guys. You've got to have height in an inordinate number of positions. And the Cleveland Cavaliers are horribly undersized. When you put Jetty Osman on the floor along with Darius Garland and Colin Sexton, they might as well be saying, follow the yellow brick road, follow the yellow brick road. These guys are lightweights, man. I mean, they can't play defense. And then you got Tristan Thompson, who's undersized. Where are your big men? Where is your rim protector? Who's going to put the wood on somebody? Who's literally going to stand up and make, the Nate Thurmond or the Kendrick Perkins stand? Who's going to do it? And on this team, nobody. The team is literally starting over. Kevin Love is a trade asset, even though it's not going to get nearly as much. He's hung in, done what has been asked of him. He took a backseat to LeBron and Kyrie, and give him an opportunity to play somewhere and see if you can get a better draft pick and start the process of getting the right kind of roster, because no matter how good Darius Garland is at passing the basketball, the reason that the most stolen pass in the Cleveland Cavaliers offensive arsenal, if you want to call it that, is the pass into the paint. That there's nobody physically able to clear out. And they can sag in and they can just smother people down low. And Garland is only starting to prove that he can shoot the basketball some. And, first year is tough coming into the league when you're 19 years old. The fact of the matter is, finishing at the rim is much more difficult. Other teams have decent big men and some have good big men. And forwards now are offensive threats as quick as a lot of guards are, but far bigger and taller. Cavaliers need to trade Kevin Love. Stephen Rose, what do you think?
Yeah, it's time to move on. I think Kevin Love could still be a valuable asset and a surrounding cast piece to a team that's in contention for an NBA title. So I think the Cavaliers need to let go of Kevin Love now before they get nothing for him later. At best, you'll probably get, first and a second round pick maybe, for the following season or whatever. Or maybe some package deal like Clint Capella from what I've been hearing. So you can get a rim protector. In that case, you can get a guy that's going to give you 15 and 10 every game. So
and a guy like Capella is only good if he has a point guard on the floor with him. And if Colin Sexton is handling the ball, Capella will never see the ball. And, he's a guy who literally will score the ball down low within 3 or 4 feet of the basket. He's a taller and jumpier Tristan Thompson.
Yeah,
So,
basically, I was comparing him to the next Tristan Thompson, if that's the case. They don't
right.
have a
And
solid
he,
point
he
guard.
can rebound the ball, he can run the floor, and but he changes shots. He definitely redirects shots, and that is something the Cavaliers don't have. Brian, what do you think?
Well, yeah, they need to get whatever they can get for him. They actually should have traded him 2 years ago before he had all these injury issues, but that's neither here nor there.
All right. And I don't know, Rox, you even have an opinion about Kevin Love?
Well, admittedly, I'm not real knowledgeable about Cavaliers basketball. Just the little bit that I know about Kevin Love, I say yeah, go ahead and trade him due to the issues that he's having. Although he's had a proven track record of being a good supportive player on the team. I think it's time for him to go ahead and go, while there's still some value that can be added there.
Trade value, exactly.
Right.
All right. And Rick?
Yeah, this would be the time to try and trade him if you possibly could. Now, didn't he just have that meltdown at that one game because Sexton didn't pass him the ball? The last thing I think he would want is to be traded with Sexton to another team, and there he is staring at Sexton again, waiting for the ball.
Well, you have 3-team trades all the time in the NBA, and it wouldn't necessarily mean that Colin Sexton was winding up in the same place Kevin Love is. But the fact of the matter is, yes, the reason he had the meltdown, and people said that he fired the pass to Jetty Osman and almost ripped his hand off. But the fact is that it's taking so long to get into play sets because Colin Sexton was dribbling the clock down, and with Beeline's approval. That's what irritated Kevin Love. Kevin Love was being guarded by a guard down low, and he couldn't get that pass into him because the guy's in there dribbling between his legs, and he finally just had enough of it. And he's right. The truth of the matter is, if the head coach is in Colin Sexton's corner, and Colin Sexton is, and I've seen him hoist up shots that were so ill-advised, and obviously he's a favorite of Beeline's, but I would get him off the team. He can't play a lick of defense, and if you can't stop anybody in the NBA, you're not going to win. And we're so undersized that we're giving up second and third shot opportunities. Can't afford to do it. Jake?
I would try to get rid of Love and Thompson at this point. What are they going to do in Cleveland? Thompson has more value. Maybe package Love and Thompson somewhere in a 3-team trade. The other 2 teams get a big man that could help them out, and just get rid of the veterans at this point. There's young talent there, and potentially, or young athletes, and find who is going to be there in the front court.
All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
If there's nobody there, to keep drafting, because we're wasting both Thompson and Love's time, and Thompson's having too good of a season to waste it in Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, Tristan's done as much as he's going to do in Cleveland, and I believe you trade him too. And you're not going to get shit for him, but he's a guy who will do the heavy lifting for somebody with minutes on a championship level team, somebody that you need. He's the guy who is the extra effort guy, and he should not be a primary offensive weapon. The next question is, are the Astros worse for baseball than steroids? This quote has come up on many sites around the internet, and I wanted to chime in on this. Obviously, I think what the Astros did is kind of similar to what the Patriots did in football, but obviously baseball is policed very differently than football.
Yeah.
When you see once again Altuve getting the Astros into the World Series with the walk-off home run, and him holding his jersey desperately to him, it brings up a lot of questions. But more than that, everybody in the organization knew. You see all of these people who were part of the organization, even if they got out of Dodge, being fired around the league because they were obviously complicit with this type of spying that was being done by the Houston Astros. The owner of the team knows damn well and should be forced to give the title back. He should be excoriated for this, and the team should not have a place in the record book. It's remarkable. Pete Rose has no place in the Hall of Fame because he gambled on a few games, and yet these people cheated to win a fucking title, and their name is in the history books. It is as ridiculous as the notion that Barry Bonds and his 70 fucking home runs, it's not a legitimate feat. The issue of steroids and cheating are slightly different types of things because steroids in baseball wasn't cheating. It was done with the blessing of the owners and the league as a whole. Steroids were not illegal. All right. If you go back to that era, I think you had to be stupid to take them, and it will shorten your lifespan. And there's all kinds of reasons not to take steroids.
Yeah.
But there was nothing illegal about taking steroids except that it made a mockery of the game. And people started looking like Bluto from the old Popeye cartoons, and it became laughable. And then you saw, when they finally said you can't take them anymore, you saw the Sammy Sosas shrink up and, like Bob Dole's dick in a cold shower.
And turned white, ironically.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
what a strange thing to see him trying to go opposite field and become a Punch and Judy hitter. There are things that happened in baseball the thing about baseball that I have the biggest problem of since Judge Landis determined it all those years ago is that, the antitrust laws do not apply to baseball. And baseball is exempt. They're grandfathered into a non-American way of life. And it leads to unhealthy things. And steroids in the game, it forever challenged the credibility of baseball to me. And now, if you think that the Astros were just doing, the basic wiretapping kinds of stuff, the spin rate, spin velocity of the pitchers, there's something fishy altogether with Verlander and the whole bunch of them regaining and gaining all kinds of prowess. And it's not a matter of technique, it's a matter of cheating. And it's really a bad scandal. Since the Black Sox, this is the worst scandal we've seen from an individual team as far as baseball is concerned. Would I compare it to steroids? I wouldn't compare it to that, but I would say that the owners were complicit with steroids. The one owner with the Astros was complicit with cheating, and there were a number of teams that more than suspected that it was going on. Everybody had a chance, basically, to have players on steroids. Even the Indians had Abe Almonte. I'm sorry, but sometimes the guys you have who are on steroids, it doesn't help. But in the case of guys like Mark McGwire, it did help.
Yeah.
And but everyone was in on the game. Here with the Astros, I wouldn't be surprised if there are other teams in the league for the period of time they've been doing this, are mimicking them. And that's really the most dangerous part of this, is how many other teams have implemented their own cheating schemes that haven't arisen yet. And how is baseball going to squelch all of that before that becomes the headline story? We're going to start with Jake. Is what the Astros did worse for baseball than steroids?
I think so, because steroids were something the players took and were not illegal, like you said. And the Mitchell report was because the players volunteered for drug testing for the investigation, and then they were criminalized by the public. Also, with the advantage they had, who steps up in the batter's box when it's 2 strikes when you're facing Chapman, unless you know something's coming? And how is that not an advantage?
Well, I mean, seeing Chapman throwing 100 and Altuve barreling the ball up,
and he stepped in. He stepped to the front of the batter's box because he knew it was off speed.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing makes you wonder, because Altuve's been such a great hitter, how much of it's real and how much of it's not. And of course, Brady Anderson. Thank you, Brian. Is Bronk and that I think Braun called him a banjo hitter. Yeah, 50 home runs in 1 year, and that was, of course, Brady Anderson. Steroids did make a mockery of the game, guys who were hitting home runs. And, what it comes down to me anyway, is Major League Baseball came to the conclusion that they didn't have to allow steroids. They could just juice the baseball and get the same effect. And that is what showmanship and marketing is all about. It's changing the properties of the ball so that it goes further. And then the players, rather than taking steroids, they change the arc of their swing. So that, and what is that stat called that the players work on as far as the plane of their swing? What is that called, Rick? The guy
exit
angle of descent, right? When they hit the ball.
It was
Angle of
allegedly
descent.
what the guy that we had who played for Seattle. The guy was the first baseman. Alfonso, is that his name? Alonso.
Yonder Alonso.
Right. That he had allegedly made that transition to changing that arc, that angle off the bat of the swing, and that's how the players catch up to the reality that the ball is juiced and that they can get a hell of a lot out of this money-wise in their career by hitting more home runs. It doesn't mean they're going to be a more efficient hitter, because Yonder Alonso was a guy who hit 275 who promptly became a 230 hitter but hit 30 home runs a year. And you get more money for hitting 30 home runs, which, by the way, is all analytics driven, folks. You can thank the world of baseball for the advent of analytics. But that's how the cheat that baseball does becomes legitimate, is simply by changing the properties of the ball. I don't know.
Well, that's what they did in the 80s when everybody started hitting home runs. You had George Bell hitting 47. McGuire hit 49. And Andre Dawson hit 49. They changed the weight of the baseball.
And I have a question for Moo, because in the 80s, were amphetamines frowned upon by the baseball purists as well? That let these guys get crazy reaction time and wake up from like a day of like straight binge drinking to be 150% for a game? Because that's a big advantage too, and no one talks about that today.
Well, when Jim Bouton wrote Ball 4, that he exposed greenies being used in baseball was a huge thing. And that, Charlie Hustle and all those guys, Pete Rose, that's funny. It was okay to use amphetamines, but it wasn't okay later to gamble on the game. But yeah, amphetamines were an early enhancement drug that players used in order to, to stay more acutely aware of what's going on, and to also be able to play double headers and to be able to get their bodies going and keep going. But as usual, with pharmaceuticals, there's always a better one that you can go to. There's Plan B, which is better than Plan A was, and so we quickly moved away from greenies.
Mr. Moohead,
They banned Adderall, right? You can't take Adderall today, so they definitely don't want that type of substance in the MLB.
That's exactly right. And Adderall is something that's being used by more than just people with ADHD. It's being used for people by people for amphetamine effect. Yeah, what's up, Stephen?
And Mr. Moohead, I'm just curious. I know that MLB is trying their best to sweep this under the rug, and I know the steroids almost crippled baseball in terms of the integrity of the game. And baseball, in my opinion, is a dying sport, but that's just me personally. I think it's majority of their fan base are middle-aged or older people that they're diehard 162 ball games a year, versus our younger generations are more cell phone texting. I prefer to watch 3 innings and go to bed or go on Fortnite. Now, anyways, this Astros will already this scandal will already put a sting on the integrity of baseball. If it didn't already, or if it's already damaged now and it's becoming a dying sport, this is going to be the nail in the coffin if baseball doesn't act aggressively. I've already said that they should remove anybody that was involved with this, should be fired, coach and or player.
But I think now, if that's the punishment, you have to root it out all over the league. I mean, the problem is they're not the only team doing this. I can guarantee you, because people were talking about the Astros cheating from years ago. This is not new.
I know.
And it took this long for it all to catch up. But in that interim time, you're trying to tell me that teams wouldn't say, well, shit, if they're getting away with it, what the hell? The league's not doing anything about it, so we're going to implement
But I think
our
that's
ways.
where the league needs to set an example, because I think if you let this go under the rug, people are just going to start boycotting, especially a lot of these old timers that are all about the integrity of the game and the moral standard of the game. If nothing is done, people are just going to be like, well, what's the point of watching this crap? You know?
Well, I mean, I ask what the point is to watch. I always know that games are. I remember I always talk about tennis because I was a very active tennis player, but I would never like to watch. I like to watch women's tennis, but not men's tennis. It was just so powerful, and it was just over so quick on the hard surfaces that it wasn't real entertaining watching guys hitting 50, 60 aces in a match at the U.S. Open. It became redundant, and it was not exciting. The women didn't hit the ball as hard and had longer rallies, and the rebound ace, which was the material that a lot of the women's tour was played on, had a little bit more bounce, and what they wound up doing is they slowed down by using rebound ace. They slowed down the U.S. Open a little bit, and they slowed down the grass at Wimbledon as well, because before the ball would only bounce to your ankles. If you've never played on grass before, that is, people don't realize that the ball skids, it doesn't bounce, and you got to get down to the ball, and that's why certain players played so well on grass, and they were the players who hit the slice, especially Martina Navratilova, who's about unbeatable. Steffi Graf was another one. You couldn't handle the underspin, the slice coming off. It came off of that grass like a sheet of ice, and so they would slow down the fast surfaces, and they sped up the red clay at Roland Garros in France and Paris, so that it wouldn't just be like a pong game going back and forth, and it was more entertaining to watch. I remember
talking about that. I remember Borg and Lendl and some other guys. Their shoes would be coated in clay.
Yeah.
During a 3-set match or a 4-set match.
Yeah, I mean, it was so slow. The clay. I can tell you about Harold Solomon. I can tell you about Eddie Dibbs. They were two American players, and all they ever did was they moved into the later rounds at Roland Garros. You would never see those guys ever get into the U.S. Open or at Wimbledon. It was only the slow surface. They were shorter men who were extremely agile and could run everything down, and they would wear people to death on the court because it was really hard as hell to hit winners at Roland Garros back in the day. They've sped up the surface since then, and so whereas it's still slow, still Rafael Nadal, nobody could beat him on clay. And the reason was he hit so much topspin on the ball and there was so much jump on the ball that you have to move in the court to play him, to try to rush him, and you would make more mistakes than he would. And he was like a machine out there. Borg was another guy who in his day with the wood racket, you couldn't beat him on the clay because he was just steadier. He was fitter than the other players. But I always knew when a sport was in trouble is when they try these gimmicky, hinky gimmicks to try to get people and the fans interested. And baseball's doing this now with, the length of the game's too long, and now we're going to control how many times the pitcher throws to first base. We're going to control how many times the manager can come out of the dugout, and we're going to change the rules about how many hitters, relief pitchers are allowed to face, all in the name of speeding the game up, because we're living in an era of Adderall freaks and everything's moving too fucking fast and they can't watch a slow game.
Not only that, Mr. Moohead, but now they want to play all the division games on weekends, like your division rivals.
I mean, these changes do not mean great health for baseball, and they had to pick up the scoring because the American public that's why soccer, as popular as soccer is is not getting the ratings on television in America because 1-0 or 2-1 games and games that end in shootouts that you have to sit through 2.5 hours to get to is not
Plus bonus
America's
time.
Plus, if you go to extra innings, that's another 3 hours.
Yeah, I mean, this is not the recipe for success with the brief, the attention span of a gnat American public.
Yeah,
we're a soundbite oriented thing. Our political campaigns are all sound bites now, and everything is, one-on-one in basketball. It's the incredible play, the pace of the game going up and down the floor in the NBA. Watch sometime the 1970s when the Celtics would play the Lakers and look at the pace of the NBA in the 1970s compared to now. I mean, it looks like a bunch of speed freaks on the court, honest to God.
Even look at the NFL, too.
Fans want fast, and baseball is far from fast.
Mr. Moohead, when I went to watch the Oilers-Bills game, and on that final drive when the Oilers converted on a first down, they had like 1 minute and 30 seconds, and I'm thinking, okay, go to the hurry-up offense, but they didn't do that back then. They would just let the clock wind all the way down, then they would go to the next play. And I'm thinking, damn, Warren Moon could have scored. We could have beat the freaking Bills. I'm thinking, the game was much slower back then. Duh.
That's right. I mean, there was no such thing as hurry-up offenses and things like that. Bronk brings up a huge point. Bob Gibson, I mean, a 1.12 earned run average. I mean, and Denny McClain winning 31 games. The fact of the matter is, yes, the mound was lowered, because they wanted to give hitters a chance, for God's sakes. And the fans were not, getting off on 1-0 games. Those were the years of Juan Marichal. And I mean, I could name you the pitchers, Luis Tiant and his 1.60 earned run average for the Cleveland Indians in 1968. 1968 was a crazy fucking year, and the pitchers dominated baseball. And that's just, and they changed it because the American public, even back then, I don't think was ready for constant 1-0 games. And you'll hear it all the time when you're watching a game. It's like nothing quite like an old-fashioned pitcher's duel. Yeah, but not for 162 fucking games.
Well, here's an anecdote for you. Here's an anecdote for you. My parents took my sister, who was 4 or 5 years old at the time, and told her that every time that somebody hits a home run at the old Cleveland Stadium, that there would be a big fireworks thing. Yeah. So when they go, what happens? A no fucking hitter. And so she ended up falling asleep by the 6th inning.
And Jovan brings up a great point, and I agree completely. Soccer, there is strategy, placement, there's teamwork, there's, so much going on. It's an intricate game. It's a chess match. And again, you could not get the Americans, except when Bobby Fischer played in Reykjavik against Boris Spassky, you couldn't get Americans interested in watching the brain game of chess. People are Twitch-oriented. We're gamers. American are gamers or video gamers. We want our NBA to emulate a video game. We want to see the laws of physics somehow defied. That's what we want today, and baseball's far from it. And so is tennis, by the way. Far from it. You're never going to be able to change the game enough to make it fast.
Does it make any sense? How come in the American League you have to have your pitcher as a designated hitter, but not in the National League? Like, I never understood that. Doesn't that put a disadvantage though to the American League if you're in interleague play, you're facing the National League, and your pitcher going in the bat?
And it's antiquated. The notion that we have specialists who come in, at least did, who would pitch, to one left-handed batter and come out of the game, that we would force pitchers to hit when their specialty is throwing the ball, not hitting it. If you really want to take care of the offensive issues in baseball and make sure that it's a more offensive game than just across the board, just go designated hitter. And baseball is obviously interested in teams scoring as many home runs as is humanly possible. And it ain't going to happen with pitchers hitting. That's for damn sure. You get one highlight every 10 years of fat boy Bartolo Colon hitting one out of the park.
Like whenever Roger would come up with that, I'm like, oh my God. Or Roy Oswald, I'm like, oh my God,
And another thing with baseball, last thing I have to mention is it was a thing for pitchers to slow play it, like Bob Gibson and Robert Clemens, where they would purposely take a long time in between pitches to throw off the timing of the hitter.
Right.
Which, I mean, it was part of the game. How do you get rid of that after pitchers see that and develop that in their game for so long?
Well, now they have they've got a clock system, at least at the little league level.
Yeah.
So now they've got an actual 30-second clock that they have to pitch through.
Right.
Please
Bring
say
back-
hello to Mr. Biggles.
It's ridiculous.
Bring back the days when Doc Ellis
Biggles.
pitched
Mr. Moohead, I know you're
on
about
LSD.
I know you're about to get off, but just one more quick question. Do you think the Astros should vacate their titles or have the championship vacated for that
Yes.
year?
Yeah, I think the owner should be sacked. I think that they should just take it away from them, and it should be humiliated. And I'm going to start calling you Blofeld. And no, don't take that the wrong way. Blofeld was the character in a James Bond movie who had a pet cat that he always would pet. And he was, what was the organization, Rick, that Blofeld was? Spectre?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Wasn't that the one that always cloned himself?
Mr. Bond. I expect you to die.
Yeah, no,
Wasn't that the one that always cloned himself?
Blofeld, I think that was Donald Pleasance, wasn't it? In the original
I think so, yeah.
movie, yeah. That's what
Well,
I
he
wanna
was
say.
he was the inspiration for the Mike Myers character.
Right. All right, I got to go. It's 7:16. You've gotten
Yeah.
bonus Moohead. You can't ask for more than that. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I hope these have answered some of these raging questions that run through your mind. We'll be back again on Monday with the next edition of Moohead Radio. Until then, hasta la vista, faster heads. Good night.
Moo.